Good evening. It's 5:30, Tuesday, May 10th. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. We are going to now stand, if we're able and interested, in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
I move approval of the agenda as provided with the addition of an HR addendum to be added to item 6B on the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Dr. Newman. All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. Next, we will move to recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond or to debate issues in this forum. Should you desire a written response to a specific question, you may request it. This evening, each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 5 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound, and the speaker will be asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. And there is one person to speak this evening, and that is Devin Stachinsky. Welcome.
So glad you learned how to pronounce my name.
I've been practicing, thank you.
Well, this is getting to be fun, I must say. Seth, thank you for responding to me. Jen, David, also for responding to my question from last time. Rebecca, thank you for the general board response. It was about what I expected as a general board response. Tonight I am here for a different reason. I have requested a report, and I suggest every single one of you do the same. The specific report I am asking that you also request is a health safety report. This report I have asked our county health officer to provide and have been told to ask for the raw data from Fargo Public Schools, Cass County, the state, the city, which is funny because the city asked for this same report and was told no. But under North Dakota Century Code 440401, officials are supposed to provide these reports. The specific report I asked for was the efficacy of our mitigation strategies with regards to COVID. Can we show that the COVID money that we have used made a significant impact compared to similar schools? Now, I know a lot of the discussion for the board throughout COVID was, well, we can't compare to other schools. We can't compare to other districts. Why? West Fargo is comparable. Grand Forks is comparable. Bismarck is comparable. We should have all of that data, at least at the state level. On the county level, we should have it for at least West Fargo and Fargo. And we should be able to see a quantitative comparison to make sure our mitigation efforts were in the best interest of the district and not just run on, well, it's because I said so. So I would suggest all board members request this specific thing, because a health safety report is a specific item that can be requested and must be reported per 4404. So I will leave you with that. I would also like to see Brian, Robin, Rebecca, David, after the meeting, please. I'd like to discuss something else with you campaign related. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the report section. We have a report on continuous improvement and accountability monitoring regarding school improvement reports. It's memo 111. I don't think we have maybe don't have a printout of 111 at our desks. Dr. Gandhi, go ahead and make an introduction, please.
Thank you. As you are aware, we go through a 5-year accreditation process with Cognia, formerly known as Advance Ed. When we are not in our accreditation years for our external review, we do continue the process in-house with rotation of campuses. It's just our same cycle, just to make sure that we are following the processes and going through, looking at the same indicators for success that they do when they do the 5-year external review. We have a district-wide school improvement team, along with each campus has their own school improvement teams as well, that lead through this process, overseen by Bob and Missy and our teaching and learning team, and doing a great job doing that. So I will now hand it over to Sean Safransky, who leads that and provides an annual update, and we'll go a little bit further about the campuses that we'll be presenting today.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. As an assistant principal at Davies High School, I have a lot of duties, but one of those that I probably enjoy more than anything is really school improvement. And it's part of that is it gives us an opportunity to really get into a lot of other buildings. I love nothing more than get in those elementary buildings and see the world that they live in, and see how they have some of the same successes and challenges as the big kids, except they're just always a little bit different. So school improvement is one of those things that I think it really helps continue to drive us as our school, as we work towards meeting our school's mission and all those strategic initiatives that are laid out there. My role really is just working with a really tremendous group of individuals across the district, whether it's principals, teachers, instructional coaches. And our role is really just to try and organize and set up internal reviews, kind of as Dr. Gandhi had said, that mimic what that big 5-year review is. And granted, we missed out a little bit of that because of COVID, where we didn't actually have people on site. But I'm guessing in 5 years or 4.5 years, we'll have people in our buildings. And this is part of that process that I think really helps prepare teachers, building principals, and the like with that. And I think probably the most important thing that really makes this process work is the vast array of people and personalities that we have involved. When we go in the buildings, we really want to try to have a diverse group of, maybe it's some teachers, maybe we have a counselor, we have an administrator, we have an instructional coach. We have a lot of different people, so that their role is to try to have a real well-rounded perspective when they go into those buildings and visit with kids. We visit with teachers, we visit with parents, we visit with all kinds of staff, whether it's hourly or teachers, and really get a perspective and hopefully get a pulse on what the building is going through. And we really ask them to be honest and vulnerable, and we find it's amazing how honest and vulnerable people really are, because in the end, they want an honest feedback of what they can do. One, to help that school be better, because that's really what we're all about. And two, I think everybody once in a while, you need that pat on the back where you can say, man, I really recognize this program, this group of kids, this thing, whatever you're doing. It's really making an impact. And we're hearing that from teachers, parents, kids, and the like. So that's really hopefully the role of school improvement. And tonight you're going to have 6 different building leaders give their brief presentation. So really my job here is just to put the ball on the tee and get it set up so everybody else can hit it down the fairway. So thank you all for your time here tonight. And first up, we've got Mr. Franklin.
I'm sorry, there we go. I'm Brad Franklin, principal at Carl Ben Eielson Middle School, completing my first year. And like I shared earlier, I keep saying Bobcats and Jefferson sometimes in our morning announcements, so that transition to being Bruins has been enjoyable and sometimes challenging, but it's been a great first year at Carl Ben. So I want to share a little information about Carl Ben Eielson Middle School. We had our review in the winter, and on the first screen you can see our demographics. Currently we're at 655 students. I think you're going to see that over the next few years, that's going to increase. Next year we have Kennedy that will be coming up to Carl Ben Eielson Middle School. So our 6th grade numbers next year will be significantly higher than we have this year. So that'll be nice to have that increase in population. You can also just see our number of staff in our building. Our EL percentage is at around 11%, just a little higher. Free and reduced, 34%. And then you can see our average years of teaching experience, 12. And then 56% of our teachers have graduate degrees. What makes Carl-Ben-Eielson unique? And I think it's that diversity. So not only our cultural diversity, but also academically, and then that socioeconomic diversity. It's something that we really work hard to really recognize in the building, support in the building, and also it's a source of pride for our building. Challenges, parent engagement. We have a great PTA currently at Carl-Ben-Eielson, but we do have a population of parents that aren't as engaged, and that's a group that we always want to reach out to and make sure that we're communicating with them, we're bringing them in the building. So it's a challenge that we're always trying to really recognize and see is there any ways we can kind of reach that population in different ways and make them part of our school community. The second one, staff turnover. I think there's a couple challenges there. One is just adolescence. It takes a special person to be teaching at the middle school. I went back to middle school because I really do enjoy that age level. And then I think also just the socioeconomic impact and social emotional needs of our students. If you combine those two together, it's a challenge for us, and it's something that we really are looking at. So how can we prepare our staff to be effective each day, and addressing the challenges not only academically, but social emotionally in our classrooms. And the last one ties in with that, just that increase in social emotional needs of our students, and then also the students with trauma. So powerful practices, and again, this came from our parents, our students, and also our staff. And the first one really talks about that strong emphasis of building relationships. And one thing I want to highlight here, when we interviewed students, that's an area of strength that they identified. They really felt like the staff at Carl-Ben-Eielson really care about them, whether it's academically, social, emotionally. So that's a real strength of the staff at CBE. The second one is that progress in the area of PBIS and MTSS implementation. So the first one, that positive behavioral interventions and supports. So really looking at our student data, looking at our behavioral data, and really being creative in how can we support our students, educate our students on doing the right thing, and then even helping our staff. And then our MTSS, that's something that Dr. Gross has been instrumental this year, really leading us through revamping our MTSS process for academics and also behavior. And the last one, just our CBE community, we really do embrace the fact that we have one of the most diverse populations. So our school community really takes pride in this fact and celebrates the diversity. Opportunities for growth. I think as a school building, one of the areas that we really want to grow is that continue to make communication and shared leadership an area of focus and growth. And that's one of the really pillars of a middle school, is that shared leadership model. So we have a building leadership team, we have a PBIS team. So really working as a staff to identify strategies and powerful practices that can meet the needs of our students and also our staff. The second one, continue the learning and development around Canvas and evidence-based reporting for all stakeholders. So currently our sixth grade our staff are reporting through EBR on our report card. Next year will be our seventh grade. So our staff are really working hard at that, but then also communicating that to our parents so they really understand how we are monitoring the success of our students in the classroom. And then the last one, again, just developing the PBIS and MTSS interventions just to support the growing behavioral needs of our students. Okay, any questions?
Jim?
Help me a little bit. What is Canvas?
So Canvas is new, so I'm not as up on that. When I came in from the elementary school, it's something new, but it's a way that we are communicating with our families, our students. So a lot of times through Canvas, we'll be posting It could be the work they're doing in the classroom. So we have a student that's out that day, they can use their tablet, they can connect with the teacher. So it's the communication piece between our staff in the building, students and parents.
Thank you.
Dr. Gandhi and Dr. Gross.
I'll start. I'm sure Bob will have a lot more too. By definition, it qualifies as a learning management system, which ultimately comes out to being it is an online database to house any type of information and create a path for communication for students to interact with their students when we utilize virtual learning or technology to supplement instruction. So when school districts across the nation started with what we call our glass paper project or one-to-one initiatives, there was Canvas, Schoology, Moodle, Google Classrooms were primarily the biggest online systems that were utilized. We as a district have always allowed teachers the autonomy to pick and choose. That did become something that we had to centralize and utilize one platform for connectivity with PowerSchool, for efficiency, especially when COVID happened and we started using instructional technology at a large scale. So Canvas is one that connects really well with what we want to do as a district, but it's a primary platform for teachers to interact and communicate with students.
Dr. Gross, do you feel the need to add more?
I do not.
Okay. All right, go ahead if you have more, and or we're
I'm
on to the
done.
next,
All right.
unless there are other questions right now. Okay, thank you.
All right, and I'm going to step in for Principal Bobby Olson. He is ill tonight. So Centennial also went through a review, an internal review on March 31st this year. Centennial has about 555 students. We are predicting that they're probably going to grow by 1 to 2 sections in the next 5 years as we go forward. That right now they are non-title and they have about 15% free and reduced lunch. Teachers, 63% with graduate degrees. Probably the interesting fact with Centennial over the last 3 years is just the number of new staff members, including our lead principal. So we have added an assistant principal, we have a new lead principal, and we've had many teachers' retirements and turnover over the last 3 years. So they are kind of getting to know each other in a sense for that building. They have a very active PTO that provides special events, but also lots of support for the building. When they went through the internal review with students, parents, and teachers, some of the pieces that really came out, and I remember hearing this because I've been a part of hiring 2 principals at that building in the 4 years that I've been here, is that they believe in the student-teacher relationship, but also the staff relationships. And so they always want it to feel like a family. They want people to feel very comfortable asking questions and being supportive. And so that is very positively viewed at Centennial. The second thing is that they've really been working on their Tier 1 instruction. And so they have been very good through their PLCs of working together on what do we want that to look like. So going into classrooms, whether it's small group reading instruction or it is math instruction as they go forward. The PLC structure, sometimes our strength is our weakness. And so one of the things that Principal Olson shared with me is that the staff actually would like more structure around PLC. So they feel they have structure around it, and they've been working hard at developing that process of making sure they're identifying kids and their needs. But they also feel like they could go a little further to customize that structure for staff. And that leads to our opportunities. And so the student monitoring, reflecting, I thought this is just a great reflection from the internal review, is that we have to have students more involved at self-evaluation, knowing how they're growing and moving forward. They took a look at what I thought was interesting, all their newsletters, and they found that they had tons of information in their newsletters, but they never had data. And so they want to send out data to families regarding how they're doing academically or how they're doing with attendance as they go forward. And the other piece that Brad hit on also is that trauma-informed practices. They are finding the need with mental health needs of students and families that even more staff need to think about that trauma-informed approach around how it affects discipline and how we work together with families. And that is the Centennial overview. And I certainly can take the questions down and get them back to Principal Olson if you have any.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for passing on? Robin?
It might be helpful to describe the acronym for PLC.
professional learning communities. And at our elementaries, it would be all the first grade teachers, probably your FIDE and music, they would meet across the district, but as a group of teachers who are working for that common goal of what kids need to know and learn and what they need. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, who do we have next? Ed Clapp. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Scholdes, principal of Ed Clapp. And when we take a look at our student demographics, we have about 470 students and about 100 full and part-time staff to support those students. We have about 66% of our students on free and reduced lunch. And we have, like several other schools in the district, we are approved for free breakfast and lunch for 2 more years through a special grant that we have. The average years of teaching experience is around 12 years, and 60% of our teachers have graduate degrees. When we really look at what makes us unique, if my research is correct, I have not been able to find another Ed Clapp Elementary in all of the United States. So I think we're the only school that has that particular name. And it's well suited since Colonel Ed Clapp was a Fargo native, and he was a visionary, a leader, and a traveler. And it goes along well with the fact that we are the Ed Clapp Explorers then, and it really helps us celebrate the diversity and unique strengths of our students as we play off that idea of visionaries, leaders, and travelers. So some of our challenges right now, not unlike other schools, managing the space for the classrooms and the specialists. We are fortunate to be a school-wide title school, and so we are able to have some extra programs and extra staff, but that also requires space. So we are always trying to balance and find a way for programs to work together and to be in the same room and things. And then the mobility of students also provides an ongoing challenge. The powerful practices that were identified for us, Ed Clapp understands their students' academic and social needs through continuous data analysis, which has led to seeking out programming to match the needs of their students. When the team went through this with us, they kind of said, here's what we really mean. You notice if you have a problem, and then you figure out a way to solve it. And so we just really appreciated that feedback and that acknowledgement. Ed Clapp has a strong coaching culture. We have several instructional coaches who coach around reading and math and behavior and classroom management, and they stay busy all throughout the day. And Ed Clapp has a positive climate and culture demonstrated through strong relationships with all stakeholders. So again, those interactions with students and parents and among staff, it's important to us that there's those positive interactions. Opportunities for improvement. Ed Clapp would benefit from developing learners' attitudes and beliefs about their learning by making them aware of learning goals and ELO scale progressions. So this would allow students to be more reflective on their learning. So right now, our teachers are very well versed in the scales and the learning progression for every standard. And our next step is really finding ways to make sure that we are bringing students in on that information in student-friendly ways, letting them know, right now you're here, here's where we need to get to, what do we need to do to get you there? And then Ed Clapp has a variety of opportunities for students that promote 21st century skills. The review team recommends continuing to increase ways that students can participate in collaborative, innovative, and problem-based learning. So just finding more consistent and more robust opportunities for students at all grade levels to make sure that we're getting to those higher level thinking skills. Any questions?
Questions by board members or of? I have a question. Could you speak to mobility and what that means?
Sure. So every year, we usually have about the same number of students who move in and the same number of students who move out. And that happens all throughout the year. And so We stay pretty stable at the 470 students. Pretty much we end the year with the same number of students that we started with, but that is new students coming in every month and students moving every month. So we're always welcoming new students into the school and then supporting students as they make that transition out. We don't have our updated mobility numbers yet for this year, but it always is interesting that the start and end number is almost identical. It's just all of the ins and outs that happen throughout the year.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, next, thank you. On to Lincoln. It's like we get a tour of our district. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Janelle Helm. I'm the assistant principal over at Lincoln Elementary. I am filling in tonight for Principal Kaiser, who is out ill. So if you're watching Principal Kaiser, I hope I do a great job with this and representing our school, and I'm sure she's watching, so. Let's go ahead and start with Lincoln, our demographics. We have about an average enrollment of 360 students and 78 certified staff members. 56% receive free and reduced lunch. You know, something I'll kind of combine together that makes Lincoln really unique is the diversity that our school brings to our community. We have 17 different languages spoken at our school. And we have an average years of teaching experience on our staff of 15 years. 56% of our teachers have graduate degrees. And what makes us so unique is that we really focus on building relationships with our staff and our students at Lincoln, and that's the top priority for us because we know that if we have the relationships in place, academics will be right there with them. And we really work hard to empower our students to believe in themselves and to make sure that we are meeting their needs by individualizing instruction and to support them in every way that we can. The other thing with our school that we really focus on is we treat every student with a trauma-informed approach because we know that's the best way to approach any problem. And that's a big, we have a very high need with social emotional learning at our school. And it's been great. We've had a lot of great training from our district to support us in that. So we've been really grateful for that. One of our hardest challenges is every year that we have about 25% of our student population that moves in and out of our boundaries in our district. At Lincoln, we have the privilege of serving our shelter, our YWCA shelter, and we have a lot of students that move in and out from there. So we like to support them and help them in any way that we can in our community. So some of the powerful practices that we have, you know, when we went through our review with Mr. Cressup, we were very proud that we had a positive school culture. And I think we've done a lot of things as not only a district, but as a school to really involve our parents and our students with what's going on in our classrooms. One thing that did come up is that our students feel safe, and we were very proud of that. We work really hard every day. We've moved our schedule around that every day our students start with a morning meeting. And that has really helped our students have a voice in their classroom and build those relationships with each other. We are very big on doing restorative practices. And I would say just from my experience in my role, restorative practices have been a game changer for us because it is giving every student a voice to be heard, and it's also helping them understand, you know, what they do has a consequence, but it also helps them understand how to fix things and problem solve. And I think that's a life skill that they all need. We are engaged in learning opportunities. Our staff this year, I think, is our biggest year with Catalyst Coaching, and that is an initiative that we have within Fargo Public Schools. It's one of the initiatives that I feel most strongly about. It is a game changer for teachers, and the effect is positive for our students. As a teacher myself, when I was teaching, I thought, yep, I've got this down. And you have a Catalyst coach come in and you're like, oh, wow, I guess I could change a lot of things. And it really made a difference for me. So opportunities for growth. You know, I think our opportunities for growth for our kids are the same we have for our staff. We always want everybody held to the highest expectations because we know if we set the bar high, that's where they're going to go. And that's really important to us at Lincoln. We are continually, when we're coaching our teachers, we're always wanting feedback. We're always wanting, you know, what can we do to improve? And the same thing in our classroom. We are really focusing on helping our students become self-directed learners and taking a real vested interest in their education. And just that starts even in kindergarten with empowering them to love what they do and learning to read and be excited about education. And then you go into our 5th grade classrooms and you watch what they're doing with technology and what they have learned and how much they have grown. It's powerful. And it's wonderful to watch, and it's wonderful for me to get to be a part of that. And as always, you know, I think with our school, we're always increasing the rigor of any task and activities because we want them to know that we want to be the best we can for them, and we want them to be the best that they can be. So any questions for Lincoln? Robin?
Thank you. I'm loving these reports. Thank you. So what I'm hearing from all of you is there are several languages spoken within each school, and you had 17. How do we communicate with those families that don't speak English? Do we have translation services?
We use Voyance, and so we have had great interpreters within our district as well, if we can't use the Voyance. But the one thing that we've really worked hard on is to, you know, it's fun if we can get the parents in the building and have the translator there, because it's amazing how much you can communicate with nonverbals, and we know that. And just letting them see how much we value having their students at our school, and then letting them know that we also value their culture and that we embrace that. And so we are trying to learn just as much about them as they are learning about us. And I think that just combines to make a great team for us.
Follow up. So Voyance is clearly a name for
Yep, it's we can call in we have a certain line that we can call in, and they speak several different languages, so we can let them know that the language that we need, and then there will be an interpreter that will follow through for us. So, all right, thank you.
I think we have a couple more questions. David and Jennifer, did you have some? Okay, go ahead, David.
Thank you. I would assume that with your relationship with the shelter, that you are quite familiar with students that are dealing with trauma.
Yes.
Do you feel that we're providing you with the needs with the requirements you feel you need to deal with those kids? Are we giving you enough help?
100% yes. And let me tell you, we have really reached out to our community resources, and I feel extremely supported with our students. We have targeted case management. We have brought in solutions to our schools to do some therapy with kids. We've worked with, you know, some of our students might have a middle school or a high school sibling, and their targeted case manager, we've been able to connect and set up so we keep that, you know, line with just the one that's been with the family the longest. Our SWIFTs have been absolutely essential. And just having our counselors, the fact that we are going to have more counselors next year is going to be a game changer for us, because we have around 350 students, and it's just a lot. We have a lot of needs, so adding that extra half-time counselor for us next year is going to be crucial for us. But yes, I do feel extremely supported with our community and within Fargo Public Schools. And I would say to our shelter, we have a great partnership with them. And they've been great to work with us. Thank you for asking that.
No, thank you. And it's reassuring to me to know that you feel that you're getting what you need.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you. So you answered part of my question. The other that I wanted to touch on was the Catalyst coaching for staff that you talked about.
Yes.
Is that a program that the strategists currently deliver, or is it different?
Well, within our school, we have teachers also that we want to be certified coaches. We know that coaching is a powerful practice, and that's how we're going to increase our powerful practice of teaching. And so our instructional coaches are also certified coaches, but like at Lincoln, I'm certified coach, and I think we have 8 other teachers that are certified coaches as well, which that really helps your building because then we become powerful with coaching each other and getting into each other's classrooms. And sometimes coaching can be, seen as something that it might make you feel uncomfortable if you have somebody watching you or evaluating you. And I think with this year, we've seen such an increase in our staff buy-in that it's become just kind of the norm. And I think that's, and that carries over into your PLCs and collective efficacy and building as a team.
Thank you.
Yes.
Missy.
Missy, go ahead.
I would just like to add to the catalyst that when we were doing kind of our needs assessment, one of the pieces was with kids with a trauma background, we are seeing that sometimes it might be work avoidance or leaving the classroom. And Catalyst, when we're looking at the research on it, one of their number one goals is to keep kids in their classroom. And by having the adults have more tools in their tool bag to do that. And so that is one of our ESSER projects, is the Catalyst. And so that's what we've been working on. And we've really, I call it sticky, because it's been well received and people have asked for additional coaching across the district. So very positive.
Thank you, Missy. Dr. Gross.
And I would say at Fargo Public Schools, our elementary are probably a little bit ahead of our secondary schools when it comes to Catalyst training. Although this year we've had many staff at the secondary level also receive training, also receive coaching. We have sent teams down to Minneapolis to see Catalyst in action at a middle school and a high school. And we will have the continued that into next year, so we can then provide us to say, what does it look like at an elementary? What does it look like at a middle school and a high school? And then how can we capitalize that across our system?
Thank you.
Okay.
All
Thank you,
right.
everyone.
Looks like it looks like you're ready. You can leave the podium, at least for now. Madison Elementary is up next. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Lori Kami, first year principal at Madison. So this is new for me to be in front of this many people. So we had our internal review March 15th. Our school is a very tiny school of 130 students. We have 7 classroom teachers, 4 special education teachers, a full-time counselor, and you can read the rest, but we have a wonderful staff at our school. About 74% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. Our average teaching experience is about 10 years, and 25% of our teachers have graduate degrees. There are many things that make Madison unique, but one thing is we have 2 of our STAR programs, which support students. They're self-contained programs that support students with autism. And we have 2 fabulous teachers and paraeducators within our school that support these students. We also have a very diverse population within our school. We have an extensive mentoringship program, and that's due to Fargo Public Schools in general, but we have multiple new teachers this year, and the mentoring program really helps teachers build upon their behavioral management, academic teaching, and whatnot. And then we are a very small school, and we're considered the hub of our location. The community really comes together and values the School of Madison, so that's really important for me to note. Our challenges is a lot of the families around our area have lacking of preschool, so that's something we'd like to look into further. And then we are a small school, so sometimes it's hard to find grade-alike teams to collaborate with each other. So we're trying to find ways to maybe meet with other schools to have grade-alike teams collaborate. Our powerful practices that the team found was we also have a positive learning environment for students. They stated when they walked in the building, they could just feel the love and caring. I mean, I get so many hugs every day. Even if it was COVID, I would take them because the students just love coming to school every day. So we also are making progress in our area of PLC implementation. And we started a leadership and equity council for our students this year. They're 4th and 5th graders that applied to be on our leadership council, and they are working really hard to help teach other students about equity and diversity within our school. And we're also trying to get the students at Madison giving back to the community more. And so that's been fun to see. A lot of them haven't been able to give back, and now they're having the opportunity to give to other places. And our areas of improvement are trying to find different ways to engage communities and families. This year I have been working weekly on newsletters, but we're also going to have our Madison Equity and Leadership Council start reaching out and doing videos for our parents to hope that we can get more families into our school. And then also we need to have greater consistency with our circle times with students. So next year we're planning a circle reboot for our whole staff. to work on building communities within the classroom. Questions?
Questions? Jennifer?
Thank you. So several of you have mentioned in the areas of opportunities, looking for ways to engage families more. And so I vaguely remember Troy Cody sharing with us a year or two ago something about kind of a best practice where the leadership teams would get together and share successes. Is that something that is, kind of done just on your own sort of initiatives, or is there something is there a structure in place for that to happen so that you can kind of, have an opportunity to hear from your colleagues what might work or what they've tried and hasn't worked?
We do have a leadership team at our school that works together, and we also, we're a title school, so annually we have to meet with families that come in about our plans and the successes and next steps that we have. I don't know, as a district, they might need help on that part. What's expected?
And maybe that's a question for.
I will say at the principal meetings, that is a topic that sometimes we have shared because it's a topic of interest, but we are probably always open to that. I do know that one of the pieces that is coming forward, and we're wondering at the elementary level, is if we need to host a district-wide type parent engagement on certain topics next year. So that's one of the things we're looking into. And that came from some parents reaching out on some topics. So for example, what is restorative justice? What is chronic absenteeism? There are some topics that I think we have some very engaged families who would participate. Tamara and I have talked quite a bit that we'd really have to work at in making sure we're inviting all of our demographics to these meetings and making it accessible. So looking forward to, I guess, those next steps.
Thank you, Missy. Nikki?
Thank you, Rebecca. I have two questions. Hopefully that'll be all right. Thank you for your presentation. Thank all of you. This was wonderful. My question for you is the grade alike connections, given the size of your school. Is there something that we can do or the district can do to help with that? Do you have ideas as to how? I know you mentioned with other schools, but what can we do to help?
Missy and I have talked a bit about this year of how we could maybe find times where we could monthly meet with another small school or a school with similar demographics. So that's something we're working on. I think that just is difficult with the ending times being different and the travel to different schools in our contract times. So it makes it difficult. But we have talked about Zooming in with other teachers. Our teachers do have good relationships with like K1, 2, 3. So we try to make it work as best we can.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Also, you had mentioned a circle reboot. What does that look like? I'm curious to know more.
Well, we've talked about our counselor this year is new at Madison, but has been a part of circles for a long time. And we're going to have Nancy Tizer and Sydney come in and talk with the teachers and paraeducators about what circles, how powerful circles can be within the classroom, because they can truly build community. And we'll practice what it looks like and what it could look like in the classrooms to give teachers the opportunity to see how powerful they can be.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Washington is up next. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Selberg. I'm the principal at Washington Elementary. Our internal review was hosted on April 5th, and it seems like it was a long time ago. And it really wasn't. So as we were looking at that, as we were going through our PowerPoint, we thought, oh my gosh, this is still really quite recent. We have about 315 students, 49 full-time staff members. We have 20% of our population qualify for free and reduced. Our teacher average is almost 15 years, and 68% of our teachers have graduate degrees. It's important to think, I just want you to remember the 15% or 15 years, because we have some uniqueness with that. We are home to a SHINE program. Our SHINE programs is a district program that supports our students with social, emotional, and behavioral challenges. We have high teacher retention, and that's why I want you to remember the 15 years, and very, very strong parent involvement. Some of our challenges is really embracing the implementation of classroom proactive circles, getting our Catalyst and our PBIS programs, really looking at the fidelity of those. Tier 3 interventions for students is a challenge for us simply because we're not a title school. We don't have the people power. We do look forward to additional administrative support. This will promote some more timely response and additional support to our SHINE program. Powerful practices. We really have an extremely positive culture with our students and families. And that is one of the reasons why our staff don't leave. They're here for a long time. The staff are committed to student learning, and relationship building in the community. We produce, and our kids really work hard. Students identify that we have really strong levels of connection with staff. They share excitement about learning, and that they even identified that they were being challenged. Parents identified positive relationships with their child's teacher, and they also identified receiving the communication that's so important on individual progress. So that was a really nice surprise for me to hear. Not surprising the fact that we do it, but that it was mentioned. Opportunities for improvement, complete implementation and participation in building initiatives. This is going to continue to ensure that our positive relationships strengthen our building culture. Full implementation of small group literacy and math, and making sure that it's with fidelity. We are also working on implementing a system-wide approach to maximizing really the use of our available resources and increasing the capacity to maximize our student growth. Any questions?
Could you please talk a little bit more about SHINE?
Yeah.
And explain what that stands for?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. It's students. Oh, I'm just going to tell you. Really, I can never remember the
Yeah, just explain a little bit more about the program.
Our SHINE program is a program for students in the district who are struggling with management. They sometimes struggle with regulation. We're working with. It really is it's a wide gamut. So some of our kids really come from high trauma. Some of our students are just really, really dysregulated. And so what our program does is we come in and we really focus, at least is consistency, that we are really looking at caring. We do everything we can to slow things down, to low breathe, and are really very accepting. So our students do struggle. I can say that it's a roller coaster, probably just like every other program in the district, no matter what. But I guess, is there something more specific that you're wondering?
No, I'm just interested in learning anything more that you wanted to share. Yeah, thank you. I think also it's nice when whether it's students or staff or parents can point to an example like about something that is being done that I guess it could be either both positive or negative, depending upon, but there can be so many services that a district or a school offers. And if we're putting the service out, we know we're putting it out, or the school knows, whoever's putting it out. But for the person that's intended to receive the information to be able to illustrate back some of those examples, I think that's when we really see that certain things are hitting the mark.
Yep. I would say probably one of our greatest strengths is communication. It's really, really important to us that we share the good, the bad, sometimes the ugly with families. And it's just really a big strength of ours that we communicate all the time. Our teachers talk to parents almost every day. Parents come in and check things out. And so it's a nice combination, nice mix.
Tracy.
Thank you. You mentioned at Washington you guys have struggles with Tier 3 intervention. So what is the process, I guess, if a student needs that level of services, or can we help you somehow as the district?
not sure about that. But I will tell you, our tier 3, we have had, it's really what happens is we end up getting our special ed involved in both sides. So our special ed in the past has, taken on some of those tier 3 practices, but not at the special ed. We're not at the special ed place yet. And so sometimes there's a little bit of confusion if we have a special ed teacher who's doing the tier 3, and then my student ends up going for special ed, and it's the same person. It just looks different. It's sometimes difficult to explain. So it really comes down to, we have programs that are absolutely available to us. We sometimes have difficulty having the people to do it.
And I'll just add to that, University of Minnesota came in and did the overview for us, the external review around our MTSS system. And they have really kind of put us on a path, and they're gonna come back next year to help us with MTSS for what we're doing at tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. One of the pieces where it's not fitting nicely for us is we have more kids than is recommended qualifying for tier 2 and tier 3 services, which shows we have to strengthen our tier 1 practices. And so they are gonna work with us so that we can really look at what opportunities are we gonna give at tier 2 and at tier 3 that actually match what someone needs. So I do think we have work across the district, not just at Kathy's building, but it will probably change how we staff for those pieces.
Thank you for that additional information, Missy. Okay.
Okay, last thing I'm going to say about that 15% you were supposed to remember. We have 4 brand new teachers this year within 2 years is the most. And so consider that in our percentage. So it really is. We have lots of longevity. So it's a great place to be. People love it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, has that rounded out our program, our presentation? Well, thank you so much. My goodness, it's been wonderful to be able to get a snapshot or an overview of a variety of the schools in the district. There have been some themes of percent of our teachers with graduate degrees, staff with graduate degrees, numbers of years of employees working in our buildings, 12 years, 15 years, and the numbers of language spoken. Fairly similar, not, there's a difference there, but overall pretty similar from the information tonight, and then the social and emotional and mental health needs. So thank you so much for that information. We need to keep that all in mind as we're making our decisions for the best of the district. Have a great evening. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you would like. Yes, Robin.
Thank you for those comments, Rebecca. What was very clear to me is how diverse our school district is. And I'm not talking about languages or anything else. I'm talking about percentages of free and reduced income levels, everything about our school district helping the YWCA. There are cultures and personalities in different schools, and I think our leaders are handling that very well and embracing the communities that they're in. I will also say that continuous improvement, everybody seems to be very much bought into that, from our building level administrators, but also our teachers, because we're here to help kids succeed. And I always put kids first. Sometimes, so what I'm trying to say is, no matter where kids are, no matter what background they are in, no matter how involved their parents are, we're here to meet the kids and every single child where they're at. And that's what I saw tonight, is the continuous quality improvement. And so I thank you. And perhaps to piggyback onto what David said, can the board continue, please let the board know how we can continue to support those efforts, because that's what we're all about. So if anybody has anything to add, please let me know. But the board needs to hear how we can support you and to help you succeed.
we certainly have a little bit more time if there's anything else that needs to be shared. I think Robin was offering that as an opportunity, but feel free to contact us and share information as you see fit and as important. Jennifer, you have one item before we get to the next.
That would be great. So maybe Rupak or Missy can comment on this, but online, I just thought maybe it was a good opportunity to talk to where on the website, if a person wants to see or read through some of these initiatives that have been identified. The reports are typically there for both Cognia as well as your internal. And then if you could also mention sort of along the lines of the progress, from year to year. So we have these plans, we have our reports, and that's really sort of the board's opportunity to hear, but we don't really compare them to last year's, like, how are we moving, but internally they probably do in terms of progress. And so I'm just hoping that someone can touch on that a little bit.
Dr. Gandhi?
I'll see if Missy has more information about where online I'm not sure if the internal information is posted. I do know that our Cognia report is posted online on our district website, and you can kind of see that as well. This is what your presentation today is a product of measuring or monitoring our results policies, which are tied to our strategic initiatives. Our strategic initiative 7 is continuous improvement, and this is one of the activities that we go through to make sure that as a district that we are improving accountability or we are improving as a district. The external review is the primary accreditation agency that we go through to renew our accreditation every year. During that time, we are compared to like school districts across the nation, and we are given an IEQ score that determines how we perform as a district. Fargo Public Schools had an exceedingly high IEQ score last year when we did our last review, and then the feedback that's given is given here. The internal exercise is to continue to replicate that process. So we're using benchmark data to always monitor and see what can we do better to serve the students that may not be served as well as some others in our system. But they're not really used as a comparative measure from one year to the next, because continuous improvement is a process, and it's a reflection process where we are growing, and it's part of being that learning organization that's always trying to take the next step forward. So additionally, what we do to keep that process fresh and also kind of go through all of our schools is we select different schools. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to compare any baseline data from our internal review process, because it wouldn't have been the same 5 schools the previous year that we did internally this year. And I'm not sure if Missy, you have any more information on that.
Well, for anyone in the public, if they go to our strategic dashboard and you go to Initiative 7, which is school improvement, we do not have them posted yet, but then we always will now in June go in and post each building's internal report so people can read those. But every building every year has to do a reflection on all of their goals. If it went better than expected, or less than expected, and then what adjustments will they make? And so internally, each building has that, because that is a requirement that we say has to be done before you can write your next plan going forward. And so they do attach, they have to keep those documents in-house at each building. Okay, you bet.
Dr. Gross.
And if people are looking to find that, it is on the Fargo Public School homepage. You click on the About Us section. Once you are there, you will click on Strategic Plan. Navigate down about 3/4 of the way down the page to Strategic Plan Dashboard, and that will provide you all this information, plus information around all of the different results that are part of our strategic plan.
I would think in regard to us as a board needing to learn more about potential supports or what we can do to continue to help, whether that's, through budget or anything we need to know really. And I guess that could be something that perhaps down the road in future reports even gets put into a report. I'm just offering that as an idea. That's something that as you put your reports together and for presentations to us, I would suggest it's could be something to think about. Here are accomplishments, here are some of the challenges, and you know what, board, here are some things that we might need to look to you for support. I would just offer that as a suggestion to think about for the next time around. So, thank you. Okay, let's go on to the we'll go on to the next item, which is the FEA report, and we don't have anyone here from the FEA for the report. So I was given that information earlier that no one would be here. So we'll move on to the superintendent's report, and after that, we'll take a 5-minute break. Go ahead, Dr. Gandhi.
Just one quick announcement for today, because of just the way scheduling works, where we have our second May meeting before we do governance for the month of May. Administration has reached out to Board President Knudsen to add something to the May 24th meeting. We were recently notified that Fargo Public Schools has a very strong chance of being awarded a best-in-class grant to provide at least one early childhood pre-K opportunity within our district that we've applied for in previous years as well. Recently, we were contacted by DPI. That requires board approval and to show kind of the systems that we put in place. We don't have governance before the May 24th meeting, so we're going to add that to the consent agenda. But please reach out to Ms. Sierra if you have any questions, but please plan for that at the next meeting as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back for the consent agenda. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda? Jim?
I move adoption of the consent agenda with the addition of the HR addendum.
Second.
There's a second. All in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. Opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is approved. On to business. Item A, 2022-23 meal prices, memo 112. Jim?
Yes, annually, we are required under federal regulations to analyze what we're charging for our meal prices, since we get federal dollars for our free and reduced meals. And they have a targeted price that we're supposed to be hopefully achieving or moving towards. We're under that targeted price right now, but that being said, we're also with a pretty healthy fund balance. And there is a process where you can apply for a waiver with the state if you have an adequate fund balance, so you don't necessarily have to raise prices to your students and their families. We have been, at this point in time, approved for the waiver for this coming year based upon our fund balance. So the recommendation coming from planning, which actually came originally from our Director of Nutrition Services, Cindy, and Dr. Gandhi, but planning visited with this data and is making a recommendation that we do not raise the prices for elementary breakfast or lunch at all for the coming year. There would be a nickel increase for secondary breakfast and secondary lunch for students. And then there would be a 10% increase for adult breakfast, adult lunch, and extra milk would actually be an additional 5 cents. If you look at the back of your memo page, you'll actually see how our prices currently compare to neighboring districts in North Dakota. And you'll see that we're actually right on line with pretty much everybody else. So I'm going to put forward a motion that we approve Nutrition Services meal increase prices of 5 cents for secondary breakfast and lunch and extra milk, and 10 cents for adult breakfast and lunch.
Is there a second?
Second, and then I have a question. if
There's a
that's
second
okay.
by Dr. Newman. Okay, Jim, do you have anything else to add?
No, but there is one more piece of data on the page, the actual increased cost to the average family per student, and keep in mind, a family could have multiple students. At the secondary level, it's an annual increase of $8.75 for that student for both breakfast and $8.75 for lunch. So you're looking at a total of $17.50 increase over the course of the year per student at the secondary building level.
Okay, Dr. Newman, you had a question?
Thank you. Yes, I think thanks for explaining the exemption waiver. It was kind of confusing the way it was written. So I think you answered it. We have been approved for that, or we're waiting to hear? We have it, okay. And I
Yes,
feel
we
like
have for the coming school year.
perfect. I don't feel like we've dealt with this for 2 years because of the free lunch and free, so it's new to me. Is that something we typically do, the exemption waiver, or have we raised prices accordingly in years past?
We've had to raise them in the past. We haven't always been granted a waiver, but we have applied for waivers in the past as well. But currently, in large part because of the way the meal program worked the last 2 years, even though we weren't charging people for meals, we were getting additional dollars from the federal government. Our fund balance actually grew over the last year. So hence, there wasn't a feeling on Cindy and Nutrition Services that they really had to go any farther than these very modest increases.
Dr.
Thank
Gandhi,
you.
do you have something additional to share?
Yeah, it's really just capitalizing on what Jim said in answer to Tracy's question. I just wanted to commend Cindy and Jackie and their entire team in our Nutrition Services Department. If you do look at that second paragraph on the memo, that talks about USDA regulations that do require school districts to raise funds, but that waiver only being granted if you have that positive fund balance. Cindy has worked extremely hard and continues to work hard. And then there's also a countermeasure where sometimes having that excess in that fund balance in your nutrition services can only cross a certain threshold as well. So it's always a delicate balance. And I know that when we go into the budget conversation, sometimes people look at that as a different perspective, not knowing that part of the intention to that is to be able to have the ability to waive, not to have to follow the USDA regulations on increasing lunch prices as well. So it is something that she's always looking at and working tremendously hard. So just continue to commend her for always being forward thinking in terms of what's best for our community.
Thank you. Robin, and then Brian.
I think it's important to mention the USDA requires us to raise lunch prices and breakfast lunches, so we are forced to buy healthier meals. And so this isn't something that we have a lot of control over, but that is one of the requirements for participating in the free and reduced lunch program that comes down from the federal government. So fortunately, we've got that fund balance, and fortunately, we can keep our additional lunch costs to a minimum for families, because it's going to hurt coming off this funding cliff after families haven't had to pay for lunches for a while.
Brian.
So both of my school districts that I'm in charge of, we have excess funds as well, and we're in the same boat. I would just encourage our people in Fargo to make sure, now the last 2 years we've gotten free lunches, that we make sure we fill out the free and reduce forms, and that everybody can get that done, because our federal funds depend on it, on free and reduced meals.
Seth.
I would also add to that, Brian, it's it's with a heavy heart that I will vote yes on this, because I understand the need for it. However, from someone who thinks that universal free lunch is a right that every child should be afforded, I would also encourage everyone in our community and our state to contact their representatives and let them know that we don't send parents a bill for the lights or the water. They're in our care. They deserve to be fed by us, but we need the state to step up. And so I would encourage everyone in our community to contact their representatives and let them know that.
David, and then Jennifer.
I had an original question, then I'd like a follow-up, but in regards to what Seth said. Due to the fact that we already received a waiver and we have a healthy fund balance, why do we feel it's necessary to raise any of this meals? Why even put a nickel on?
Jim?
Well, I can't speak totally for Cindy's rationale on the recommendation. I do know, in particular on the adults, we're well under where we need to be on them. And I think part of her fear was that if she doesn't do something at the secondary level, we're going to be facing larger increases going forward when we have to revisit this next time around. I believe that's the reason, but again, she's not here, so I don't want to hold her feet to that fire.
Cindy is here. Cindy is in the audience. Okay. Do we have a question for Cindy, board members? Cindy, are you willing to help answer the question? So, is that on? Okay, so the modest increase is in there as a proactive measure because of the increase in food prices right now. Over the past year, they have skyrocketed and they will continue to as far as projections go. And so although we have a healthy fund balance now, I just want to take some steps to making sure we're still covering our costs as I talk to the other school districts. The other larger school districts in North Dakota, they are talking like they are going to be doing a substantial increase to their meal prices. And so that was one rationale for doing it. The other thing is if we don't meet that target pricing like Jim talked about, we're required to raise our prices a minimum of 10 cents. And so I did that for the secondary level because you can see we're a little bit behind as far as comparing our prices to other schools within the district. And so I wanted to stay kind of on board with that line. Thank you. David, go ahead.
But Cindy, due to the fact that we received a waiver, you would not have had to request an increase for secondary lunches, would you?
That is correct. With the waiver, we could choose to do no increase.
David, go ahead.
Could I offer an amendment that we do not raise the cost of any of the student lunches? I'm comfortable with the adult lunches going up, but I would like to make an amendment that we do not raise secondary breakfasts or lunches as well.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Second.
David?
I would just, my rationale would be the fact that we've received a waiver, which is wonderful. It may not occur again next year. And we have a fund balance, so I don't think this is really going to damage us significantly.
Jennifer, did you still have a comment or a question to make? And then I see Dr. Gandhi had his hand up too.
Not necessarily. I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to discuss the amendment. And I guess, I mean, I think that David makes good points. I can't think of really a counter. I mean, given what we've just heard too from our principals and the needs of students, and it seems reasonable, considering our ending fund balance and where we're at. I'd have some additional questions in terms of trying to understand, and maybe Cindy can speak to this, what was, and I know this was long ago, so maybe we don't know the answer, but what's the rationale for the state regulating us to increase? And why is that not a local decision for the district to decide how they choose to spend their general balance or their nutrition balance or whatever it is, you know, that we transfer in and out of? I'd like to better understand the rationale for that if we could. And then my follow-up is really around Farm to Fresh and how doing this may or may not impact the Farm to Fresh program that I know that you work so hard to implement in the district. Because if I remember correctly, in years past, some of the rationale for increases was to be able to provide healthier options to students. And so that would be my where I would hold back. And so I'd like you to comment, if you could, on both of those things.
Before that, I know Dr. Gandhi, you had your hand up, so I was wondering if you had anything else to share.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to share is I think just to some of the questions that have been asked, again, I think we might be making an assumption that just because we have the ability not to raise prices at all this year because of we're not going to fall further behind. I would just draw everyone's attention to some of the information that's already presented in the memo, specifically that second paragraph. The USDA target rate for lunch pricing to cover anticipated food and labor costs is $3.31. The district's comparable price is $2.58. So the strategy here being utilized by Cindy and being supported by all of us in administration and the planning committee is not because we want to raise prices, but it's because we want to be able to do it with the most minimal impact that we can to our families long term without widening a gap, because we are going to continue to have that because of a federal regulation through the USDA, not a state mandate. It's a federal, and that do provide the funding to be able to provide those meals for our students. So we want to be able to make sure that we could do it at the most smallest impact possible and continue to have the ability year after year, should we have that and should our revenue allow us to do that, to reduce that impact versus reducing it 1 year and then potentially magnifying it for years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Any other discussion? Dr. Newman?
Thank you. I was just going to say something very similar, that I will not be supporting this motion because I appreciate the work the planning committee does and I trust their judgment here. And two, I respect the administration. And Cindy, if you recommend we need to make this as a proactive move, I think that's you have what's in mind, what's best for our students. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Nikki?
I have a question that may or may not play into this, but with all the hard work that you do, I've been on calls with people trying to preserve the lunches that we have been receiving, the breakfasts and lunches that we've been receiving over the last couple of years. What I'm hearing a lot of is delivery issues. There are school districts that simply milk didn't show up, or
Nikki,
different things like that.
I have been pointed out to, just to try to make sure that the comments are in line with the amendment that was offered.
With the amendment, okay. Sorry, this is not the amendment.
Okay, anything else that you have regarding the amendment? All right. Anyone else? Jennifer?
Can we let Cindy answer the question how it would impact if we did not raise in prices to farm to table.
Cindy, if you have any information you'd like to share before we go ahead, that would be fine.
Believe, so the question is if we didn't raise prices, would that reduce our ability to do farm to school efforts? And I would say no, we would still have the funds to utilize those programs or seek out those opportunities.
Thank you. Let's vote on the amendment.
Johnson,
No.
Brian Nelson,
No.
Robin Nelson,
No.
Newman,
No.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
No.
Holden,
Yes.
President Knudsen.
No. The amendment fails. Back to the original motion. Is there any other discussion on the original motion? Anne Marie, please call the roll.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
No.
Benson,
No.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
No.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knudsen.
Yes. The motion passes. Approval of AP 4210 Virtual Instruction, Memo 114. Dr. Gandhi?
During the last legislative session, a law was passed that requires school boards to pass a policy that allows districts to provide virtual instruction should that occur. Last year, around the same time, we asked you to pass a policy that was going to sunset at the end of this year because that policy was developed so we could provide a virtual academy option to students this year while the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction's administrative rules were being developed. Those administrative rules have now been finalized and posted, so we are asking the board to replace last year's policy that sunsets at the end of this school year with the current policy that is in your packet that would allow us to provide a virtual academy option for students that decide to utilize that option moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhi. Is there a motion? Jim?
I move the Board of Education approve Administrative Policy 4210, virtual instruction as presented, allowing virtual academies in Fargo Public Schools.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Robin Nelson. Jim, anything else to add?
No.
Okay. Any discussion? Jennifer?
Thank you. So I have a question. So some districts across the nation are allowing the virtual academies to basically to log into the current day-to-day classroom, is my understanding. This is separate, and it is like we did during COVID, correct? It is a separate pass, so students would only have access to maybe 5 of the 10 classes type of thing, or their core requirements, not all of them. And so where I'm going with this is really my question is, I don't know what, an ending cost analysis is to provide a virtual academy arm. I think it's important that we have options and opportunities to reach students who need those types of adjustments. But what has the district discussed or come to in terms of why aren't we doing it in just allowing students to log in virtually into the regular classroom rather than having a separate standalone sort of virtual arm? Maybe I'll just start there.
Dr. Gandhi?
There are multiple questions there, so I'm going to try to tease out what I
Okay.
can. The first question in terms of why aren't the districts allowing, so going back to the policy and what's in your board packet, there's a difference between a virtual academy, virtual instruction. What you're talking about for virtual instruction is just the ability to come in to the in-person instruction. The reason that this is treated as a separate entity is because that is part of the administrative rules set up by the Department of Public Instruction in North Dakota. In order to provide a virtual academy, which is a separate school, it has to be treated independent of the in-person schooling. It has to be just like we would if you're enrolled at one of our schools, virtual academy becomes another school. We report it separately to the state with a separate plant number for data purposes and all of those things. So that's the answer to that piece. Now, for in-person instruction, we can like still utilize technology as an option if we wanted to, if whether as remote learning for inclement weather or other conditions, that could still happen, but those two things are completely independent of one another. I don't know if I remember the second part to your question.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with that is why can't they run, why do they have to be separate? Why couldn't we allow someone to really enroll in a virtual option full time, but it would really be in your same curriculum because it is limited opportunities in terms of what classes, correct?
Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, so again, it would be because of DPI's admin rules, and I do remember the second part of your question in terms of what we're offering and the cost piece as well. We won't know the cost piece until we know what the enrollment is going to be. At this point in time, we do not expect the virtual academy to come at a cost to the district that's not positive. So we do feel that we're able to offset the costs with what we're getting to be able to provide for the students that would be benefiting from that. However, that's something that we would monitor. The policy is not a guarantee that's going to be offering year after year. That's a budgetary conversation, that's planning. The policy just means that we as a district are allowed to do that. We have to submit a policy to DPI to even be able to have that option in perpetuity, and that's why you're approving it today.
Basically, this is legislative cleanup. And because North Dakota Century Code and the administrative rules require so many hours of in-person instruction, and so how can that happen? And at the last legislative session, they allowed for this option to be there. So we are kind of required through the state to update our policy. It's not up to us, quite frankly.
Thank you. So I was pleased to see a few things in here that students doing this virtual academy have to maintain the same grade requirements for extracurricular, activities. They'll be held to the same standard for standardized testing and district-wide assessments. Was it decided by Fargo Public Schools or by DPI to have the student attendance be taken weekly? I'm curious why that's not daily.
Dr. Gandhi or Dr. Gross?
So that was something that we've had conversations around in the Fargo Public Schools, knowing that with the virtual learning, sometimes that learning is more flexible, the schedule in which a student may actually complete that coursework. But we also want to make sure that over the course of the week, course of the month, and the semester, she or he or they are actually completing the work that needs to be accomplished, and that we then will look for our chronic absenteeism by students who are not completing that work. And there is a plan then to provide a layer of support when students are not completing that work, in which we will utilize in Fargo Public Schools our own staff members to provide that tutoring and mentoring and support for those students. So it was a way for us to ensure that students are completing what needs to be accomplished and that they stay on track for course completion and ultimately for graduation.
Go ahead, Dr.
Just
Newman.
one other question. Also, it says we're not going to allow people to open enroll into our virtual academy. Was that an issue? Were people trying to do that, or for non-residents to try and enroll into?
Whoever would like to speak to that, go ahead.
Well, I can tell you that we have had some families ask. And so because their districts did not offer it, and so we were unable to, we said we would look at it, but that is pretty clear in the law that we will not be doing open enrollment.
Dr. Gandhi?
The reason that it's that we're using the language of open enrollment, because open enrollment we get a control as a district, right? Even with our in-person buildings, we look at it based on enrollment patterns. The goal here would be not to create an avenue where DPI's intent would be that for districts that don't offer it, if they have students that want to provide a virtual academy, those students participate in those school districts participate in a cost-sharing agreement with the district that's offering it, right? So that's fair because of the way the per pupil funding formula works. Now, there might be circumstances of open enrollment that we don't know about, which we would follow our normal policy of if there's extenuating circumstances, working with the appropriate superintendent to make that call. But that's the reason why we're doing no open enrollment. But we also want to make sure that we have that discretion if there's a situation at this point in time that we're not thinking about. But overall, it is not intended to be a way to collect per pupil funding from a student that might reside in another district. The path for that would be for that district to engage in a cost sharing agreement, and that's why open enrollment would be closed.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Anne Marie, and call the roll, please.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yep, yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. The next item is a change to EL 12. It's memo 115. Dr. Gandhi?
Again, during this last legislative session, we were given flexibility to provide what some of you may know as the Learn Everywhere Bill, which is the ability to provide instructional credit to students for learning experiences that are offsite as long as they're done through a sponsoring entity and they've met curricular requirements established by the district. The spirit and the intent of how that legislation was written was not with consideration to the school districts in North Dakota that have a governance model in place. So their intent was for Board of Education to approve each sponsoring entity opportunity through special board meetings and go through that piece. That is different than some of us school districts that have a governance model in place. So for us, the change would not be for the board to adopt any board policy. It would be the change to EL 12. We have, or Dr. Gross has worked with DPI to make sure that that still meets the intent of what that law is. Just to provide some clarification as well, because I think oftentimes this bill and this process is assumed to be CTE. That's not the case. We've already provided learning opportunities for students offsite at CTE. Dr. Jonas can give you a myriad of examples. I think we have 2 students this year that work at Luther Ford and get credit and then are also taking classes with us the other part of the day. This is more for the processes we already have for our the processes we don't have for our non-CTE classwork if there's opportunities through sponsoring entities. So Dr. Gross and the teaching and learning team or Missy can share more information, but we are requesting that we have the board adopt and support that process through EL 12, which would mean that you wouldn't have to call a special board meeting for every time that situation arises. It would go through the same process that we do, which is administration reviews those and provides those opportunities and moves forward.
Thank you. Tracy?
I would just like to make a motion that we approve EL 12 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Seth. Tracy, do you have any other thing to add?
I don't, thank you.
Okay. Robin, did you have a comment? Okay. Jennifer?
Question, thank you. So, Rupak, how would that work then if you would add something anew to the curriculum? Because that is also in our board policies, right? And so if there's a major change to curriculum, i.e. we stop offering a certain foreign language, it usually comes to the board as a briefing as the administration intends to change. Would the same be true here then?
Yeah, great question. This is not adding or removing any curricular requirements. So what this legislation allowed to do is simply say that if I am expected to master a certain amount of standards or objectives or essential learning outcomes in English 1, that can be done and demonstrated through other way. The content and what my expectations are don't change. It's just that that information can be delivered to me and I can show my mastery through another way. There has to be a whole process where a teacher of record can verify that. We can verify that those standards are being tracked and met if it's not being done physically at our school. And that is why we wanted that process to stay with our teaching and learning team. So it's not adding or removing any curriculum. It is allowing sponsoring entities to provide instruction off-site as long as we have the ability to still verify that that instruction is being met and the standards that those students are supposed to receive are being taught.
Any other questions? Anne Marie, go ahead and call the roll.
Newman,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes, motion passes. The last item under business is the Board Outside Liaison Assignment Review, Memo 113. And so that comes through governance process. And from me, looking through the assignments, I don't see any that indicated that oh, there's one here, Fargo Youth Initiative, is this assignment an effective active group? I know, Dr. Newman, you had a comment there. I felt that it's not so much an active group. I don't think that there are any here that have made suggestions in terms of elimination. And then I know there were a couple of suggestions perhaps to just kind of explore other liaison assignments. So wondering what fellow board members would like to do with this. And since it's on business, maybe we need a motion for even receipt of this, if you like. Otherwise, we have the information in front of us, and that's it. Robin?
I don't think we need a motion. We received the report. I think a lot of these, for example, Fargo Cats Public Health with the board that I'm on, that is through city charter. And so we're required to be on some of those, not unlike Fargo Youth Initiative. And I was on the inaugural Fargo Youth Initiative, and you can't be active if they don't meet. So, but it's a fun group, and a lot of these really aren't in our control.
The Native American Commission too, there's, the makeup of the Native American Commission has a school board member on that commission, so that's why we serve there. What would fellow board members like to have done with the information where there are some suggestions for, I don't know, possible partnerships or liaisons? As Robin indicated, lots of times it's a group comes to us and asks for our participation. I just am looking for feedback on the suggestions. Or maybe do they just sit where they are? It could go to governance if you'd like. Nikki?
Well, I would like to see us at least take a look at them. I mean, it seems to me there's a few more things that might be good for us to look into or to engage with, perhaps Human Rights Commission. I'd like to see us do more with our new American families, engaging them. How can we help them? How can we acclimate them? I think that would be critical for us to understand.
Robin?
So when I was board president, I did, based upon suggestions to get involved in some of these city committees, what I did is I went to the mayor and asked if he felt it would be appropriate for us to be invited to serve on that. And he said very clearly he would let us know. So maybe I recommend to President Knudsen to have a brief conversation with our mayor and say, is there an interest for us to be involved in these?
Some of these are city committees and some of them are not, and I certainly am willing to do that. And if there's, depending upon what I learn, I could bring that information, put it on a governance committee agenda and go from there. So I can commit to doing that. All right, that takes us through the business section, on to board reports. Seth had requested to be first. He was trying to get to the centennial celebration at Roosevelt Elementary School this evening. Our meeting is going a little bit longer, so you're not going to be able to make it. However, since you made the request, why don't you go ahead?
I had a short report. I was going to let everybody know that I was going to go to the Roosevelt celebration, but that's not happening. So the only thing that I have is I just wanted to let everybody know that we got your email, Rebecca, about the May newsletter for the Indian Education Program. And I just wanted to let everybody know that my band, the Four Feathers, will be actually performing at the graduation. Indian Ed at Discovery on the 18th from 6 to 9, I believe. 6 to 8. So just want to let everybody know that, and hope to see you there.
Thank you, Seth. Dr. Newman?
Nothing to report for me. Thank you.
Jennifer?
So I attended the Junior ROTC Awards and Ceremony on Saturday, the Change of Command event, and it was such a pleasure to be there. Yeah, I had never had the opportunity to do that before, and it worked out. It was just really an honor to be there and to watch those kids beam with pride. Nikki was there with me as well. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Colonel James for the invite. Yeah, for having us there. And we ended up handing out some awards, which I didn't expect to do, but that was a nice pleasure too. And It really, really is just, it was a really great program, and what a wonderful way to make it shine on that day. So thank you for inviting us. And I think looking forward, I would encourage everyone really in the future to take an opportunity to go watch, because those students, they have so much pride in their program, and their leader has just really done a great job recruiting and working through the difficulties in the last few years. So it's just, I was thankful to learn more about that program, and so glad that the district offers that program. And wish I would have known about it sooner, several years ago. Anyways, additionally, I attended an event on Friday evening, and I believe that it is going to be made available. Well, I know it is. It's just not out there that I have found yet. Where Dr. McCullough was in town speaking and sharing some very important data that each and every one of us should really care about. And additionally, with him was Chris Kobach, who is a constitutional lawyer. And again, serving on a school board, each and every one of us should care about what he had to say. So I would encourage you, if you weren't able to attend, to go back and listen to it. It is going to be made available online. And if you want any more information or need me to forward the link as soon as it becomes available, I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
David.
I attempted to bring this up earlier, but I want to applaud Seth for bringing up the topic of free meals for all of our kids. And I too feel that it is an absolute obligation. The state should be providing that money. I would be very interested in the board having the discussion centered around what it would actually cost us to provide meals for all of our students, and what the financial implications of that would be. Because as Nikki brought up as well, we're receiving a lot of emails regarding the fact that for the last 2 years, it's one of the burdens that our parents haven't had to share in. And I think it would be very beneficial to all of us if we would at least have that discussion, so we could see what exactly it costs us and how we may go about funding it.
Jim.
SEEC had their first board meeting at our new offices, which if you haven't been by there, it's kind of on 32nd Avenue and 42nd Street, right across the street from Casey's, I believe. Pretty nice location. And they wanted to pass along their thanks to Fargo Public Schools for housing them for the last several years over at Agassiz, although they're happy to be in their new space, as it's a pretty big upgrade. Planning met. You saw some of our work in terms of the meal prices. We probably are going to have at least one, if not two, planning meetings still this month, as Jackie gets ready to get a budget put together to ultimately present to the board in June. And that's it from me.
Robin.
Thank you. On April 25th, North Dakota United did have a presentation on North Dakota PERS update. We can expect the next legislative session for that to be presented to remove the retirement plan for public employees, which is a good chunk of our school district. So that was, I learned a lot attending that. Also, a little bit about Badges of Unity Board. Sergeant Jacobson is here. That is a personal board that I'm on, but it crosses over a lot into what we do within the district here. There is some shared training, NCTI training, that the community engagement team leads, and they partner with our restorative justice director. So we are leveraging and cross-leveraging some taxpayer funds. Also, 1 year ago today was the Break the Silence video was released. And that came up in my Facebook memories, and I thought that would be something to celebrate, because what the community engagement team is now moving towards is having a video 1 year and then a motivational speaker the next. And so this coming year, we can look at a motivational speaker, and I don't want to say the name because I don't want to spoil this surprise, but these are all funded not with taxpayer dollars, but with donations to the Badges of Unity Advisory Board. And Sergeant Jacobson is is in charge of that team. And so we have great partners with the City of Fargo as well as the Fargo Police Department. And that very much affects our students, not only with our student resource officers, but reaching out with mental health. So I celebrate that partnership. Thank you, Sergeant Jacobson.
Brian?
I attended a planning meeting, other committee meetings. I think it's important to know that that the hot lunch program is a national program, a federal program, not a state program, and that we need all of our people to apply for the program because our funding is determined with title funds, Title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., based on those applications and things. So before we have that conversation, we got to make sure we jump through this hoop first, I feel, as our board member, having the 26 years of doing this.
Nikki?
Thank you. April 28th, of course, we had governance, as we do once a month. Last Thursday and Friday, I was honored to be asked to be a part of various stakeholders in North Dakota child nutrition. And we approached Senator Hoven's office about continuing at a national level. I believe because of my PTA work, they probably reached out to me. We also have a meeting scheduled with Senator Hoven for mid-June. I think it's June 15th. Also, that will be one of the national PTA asks. We have 3, and that is one, is to continue that. And they're asking at least for 1 more year so that school districts can start planning better instead of it being all or none for their families. So we're continuing that work. Also on Friday, Principal Olson at Jefferson invited me. They were renaming their lunchroom to the Kit Kat Diner. And there was a sweet little first grader who won that contest. They had a contest, and her parents came, and she was all goosebumpy and giddy, and it was a fun event to be at. And likewise, as Jennifer had mentioned last Saturday, it was an honor to attend the Air Force Junior ROTC change of command. And they showed us some of their exhibitions, both armed and unarmed. And then we attended the awards ceremony afterwards. And it was a real honor. It was a real joy. Very proud of those kids. In an environment that I felt could have been very competitive, they were very supportive. And it didn't matter male or female. They cheered, they woohooed, they high-fived, gave each other knuckles. I just really thought it spoke well of the leadership of the program and the opportunities that these kids have. So I'd encourage any of you that could make it to do so in the future.
Go ahead, Robin.
Quick follow-up. I also visited with Senator Hoven just due to extending the lunch waiver. He is adamant not to support that. He is a target because he is on the USDA board. So good luck if you can change his mind.
I will round this out by talking about, yes, attending governance, and the Native American Commission met Thursday, and it was a really special meeting. We haven't met for probably a couple months. We celebrated an outgoing member, a person that is, she had served as our president at one point, has to relocate and move out of the community. And we celebrated the life of a Native American commissioner that has passed away. And we celebrated 2 Native American commissioners as new commissioners. And so we had lots of singing and lots of drumming and lots of prayer and lots of cleansing through with lots of sage happening and in that room at the city hall. And it was just a really, really moving experience. And it reminded me of when I started on the commission and the good work that those commissioners do. Anne Marie has provided us with a email that has the calendar of our assignments. Probably takes us throughout the rest of the school year. And our next meeting is May 24th at 5:30 p.m. and it is 7:22 p.m. and we are adjourned.